Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. And welcome to our Friday afternoon World NERPS webinar. I'm Tobias Ide. I'm Associate Professor of Politics at Murdoch University in Australia and also a NERPS specially appointed professor for peace and sustainability. And it's my great honor to moderate this webinar. In case this is the first webinar or the first NERPS event you are attending. NERPS is the Network for Education and Research on Peace and Sustainability. And it's a global network that brings together scholars, academics, practitioners, policymakers, and thought leaders on the peace and sustainability nexus, having, among others, a journal, annual conferences, a blog, and this really amazing webinar series. And NERPS is based at the University of Hiroshima in Japan, honoring the peace research and peace activism tradition of this city. And today I am very happy that we have for our webinar Maria Isabel Irurita. Maria joins us from Colombia today, so it's really in the middle of the night for her, and it's highly appreciated. She takes the time and stays up that long to share her wisdom and insights with us. Just to give you a very brief introduction, Maria holds an MA from Goldsmiths University in London and a PhD from Middlesex University in the UK. And she's currently the director of the Yunus Centre for Social Innovation at the Universidad Icesi. And she's also the director of the MA program in Social Innovation and Management, also at Universidad Icesi. She has done extensive research on social innovation and social economies, and today she's going to talk to us about the role of social business in creating a peaceful and reconciled society, the case of Colombia, where she also lives. Just for the housekeeping, Maria will talk for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we open the floor for questions and discussion. And without further ado, Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening almost to some of you. Thank you very much for this invitation and for that introduction as well, Tobias. I'm so glad to be here and to know I was very, very happy a couple of months ago when I realized there is a network of this magnitude, of this level of coherence, working on peace and sustainability together. You hear a lot, we've been hearing for decades now about peace building processes. And more lately, we get to hear a lot about sustainability. It's like our collective dream. And you rarely get to hear about those two concepts together. So I'm very, very happy to be participating from this and that you guys exist and that you have extended this invitation to me. So today I'm going to be talking very briefly about, first of all, the creator of this concept of social business, someone that you might have heard of, Professor Mohammed Yunus, Nobel Peace Prize in 2006, Peace Nobel Prize. Then I will be talking a little bit about Colombia as well as a context and as the scene where this takes place. And then I will be sharing some examples of what I call social businesses and a strategy to a reconciled society. This is my email address. You can see there. If you want to continue this dialogue, please feel free to drop an email and we'll start a conversation. Social innovation, which is the area in which I work, and I have been working for the last 15 years, can only happen when it is collaborative, when it is about our collective intelligence. So please share your thoughts after this webinar comes to an end through this email as well. So to start, who's the creator of this concept of social business? It is the professor Mohammed Yunus. Mohammed Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for a very well-known invention, the microcredit or the microfinances. Some experts calculate that it has taken out of poverty approximately 400 million people. So it is not a small deed, taking 400 million people out of poverty through this simple idea of why don't we loan small amounts of money to poor people? Poor people might not have collateral guarantees that they will repay, but they have something very strong, the social capital, in a very organic way. This idea of microfinance grew stronger and stronger. And by the year 2006, the Nobel Peace Committee realized here we have someone known as a banker, the banker of the poor. Here we have an institution dedicated to fight poverty, the Grameen Bank. And in 2006, they award him the Nobel Peace Prize. Why a banker is awarded a Peace Prize? Because by now we know that in a context of extreme poverty, you cannot build lasting peace processes. So Professor Yunus wins this Nobel Peace Prize, and believe it or not, the next day after winning his Nobel Peace Prize, he comes up with this concept of social business. That is a very well-known anecdote. He went to have lunch after the ceremony with the president of Danone, the chief executive of Danone, the yogurt company. And the president of Danone tells him, tell me about this microfinance, microcredit. Why did you win the Nobel Peace Prize? So he tells him the story, and then he says, tell me about Danone. What do you do? I produce the most delicious yogurt ever. We are leaders worldwide in these products, fair products. And by the end of that lunch encounter, Mohammed Yunus tells him, why don't we create a joint venture, Grameen Danone? So the chief executive of Danone says, to do what? And he says, to do yogurt. You said that your yogurt is very delicious. Why don't we set up a joint venture? Why don't we create a commercial arm of Danone, but in my country, in Bangladesh, for a special purpose, to help fight the malnutrition of the children in my country? So in this very simple way, he comes up with this idea. You, a traditional company like Danone, please come and create another commercial arm in a new territory in Bangladesh to sell what you are telling me that you sell best, yogurt, but with a special purpose to fight the malnutrition of the children in my country. And you give us the investment so we can set up this business. And then you can recover your investment. You will recoup all your money. But after that happens, every single piece of utility or dividends is reinvested into the social objective. In this simple dialogue, the professor comes up with an idea that he has dedicated the last 18 years of his life to that, social business. He has written 4 books about it, and I highly recommend. The last one is called A World of 3 Zeros. He gives us an idea, not an utopia, an idea of how can we walk together towards a world of zero poverty, zero unemployment, and zero carbon emissions. And this vision, he makes it possible through the vehicle of social business. I highly recommend this book. So if you have a chance, please read it. In this book, A World of 3 Zeros, he's talking about 2 main problems that we have as a society. the wealth concentration levels that we can stand, and climate change. And he says these two phenomena, wealth concentration, inequality in wealth distribution, and climate change, are time bombs. Eventually, this will lead to social unrest, to protests, to fights, and we need to work on our machine. He always uses very beautiful analogies. Professor Yunus has spoken about the bonsai people. He says poverty does to people what a pot makes to a plant called bonsai. A bonsai has the potential to grow and become a very big tree, and it is the condition of the pot in which he is planted that makes him stay small. So that's why he talks about bonsai people. He says poverty creates the bonsai people. And lately he's using another very simple and beautiful analogy. I heard him 2 years ago talking to young people in a university here in Colombia saying, listen to me, my dear ones, your house is burning and you don't go to sleep when your house is burning. You try and do something, at least you call the fireman, you go and try and put some water over it. So you don't go to sleep when your house is in flames. That's what he says. In this very nice way, with this concept of social business being the center of his current intellectual production and of his activism around the world as well, and showing us that our economic system is based on a partial version of humankind, that our economic paradigm is based on an idea that, yeah, it's true, but it's partially true. It's not the absolute truth. Yeah, we are rational, self-interested individuals, and when we try to satisfy our needs, there's an invisible hand that comes and creates a perfect equilibrium. We take decisions under perfect information conditions, etc., etc. You know, that economics that we keep teaching at universities all around the world, in Japan, in Colombia, and everywhere else. So he says this economic model in which we are embedded only explains half of the human nature. Yes, it is true that we are self-rational. It is true that we want to be better, that we always want to be in a better and a better situation. But we are not only about selfishness and about wanting the best for myself. We are also highly empathicus. We are highly cooperative among us as human beings. So he's appealing to that other half of us as well as humanity. And he says, if we think of an economic system that also reflects that half of us that is concerned about the other, that half of us that is solidary, that wants everybody to grow together, we need to create a different type of business. We need to create social businesses. And what is his definition of a social business? He will say, like social enterprises, a social business will be structured around a social objective or an environmental objective or a cultural objective. But we summarize these under the umbrella social business. It's not, hey, let's set up a business and we become millionaires. No, it's let's set up a business so we can address this problem through a market mechanism. Secondly, social businesses, like social enterprises as well, have to be financially sustainable. Nobody is interested in a very committed enterprise that is broken or that is about to go bankrupt. So yes, they have to be sustainable, because if not, they will come out of the scene. Just like traditional businesses fail all the time, social businesses and social enterprises do also fail if they are not properly researched, designed, and if we don't have a clear business model. So those first two characteristics, the social objective and the fact that it has to be financially sustainable, are shared, as I said, with social enterprises. But here he makes a difference. He says, but we will have an additional characteristic that separates a social business from a social enterprise. It is also a semantic exercise, because in real life, a corporation, a business, a company, or an enterprise might be synonyms. But here he says, in a social business, you cannot distribute dividends. You have to create. There has to be a profit. Otherwise, it will not be financially sustainable. But nobody appropriates that profit. Every piece of profit gets reinvested into the social objectives. So, with this idea, in the same way that businesses can come here and create here in this piece of land richness, prosperity, jobs where there was nothing, a social business can come and create impact, betterment of conditions for populations. He uses this concept of social business in a double sense. That's what I say. It's a double invitation. He's asking universities around the world urgently to teach this topic of social business. He's urging the new generation of entrepreneurs to consider this kind of business. In a social business, if I go and set up a social business, I will get paid for working there. Everybody will get paid. Investors will recover their investment. But after you have done that, after you have recovered an investment, and after you have paid everyone a fair salary, everything has to be reinvested into the social objective. So the invitation is for both people, especially young people. He's saying, get to know that you can be a successful entrepreneur, but you can also help to improve the world. And in the same sense that this idea was born, he also invites companies and traditional companies such as Danone to create social business. To young people, he's telling them, he was very direct. Last time I saw him 2 years ago in a university, and he said in their face, in our face, you are making a mistake as teachers. You are teaching young people to go and look for employment. And actually, you need to teach them how to create solutions rather than looking for employment. And he says employment and looking for unemployment is here. And being an entrepreneur and having the creativity that you need to be an entrepreneur is here on the other side of the spectrum. So the invitation is both for young people or for anybody that wants to set up a business in this kind of format, and also for companies that perhaps might want to innovate in their corporate social responsibility strategies, that can develop new commercial arms, but with a special purpose, and that can increase the impact they have on the planet and on people. So up to there, I'm going to be talking about social business and Professor Yunus. Now let me talk a little bit about this very colorful, nice country in the north part of South America called Colombia. In Colombia, we have been through a very colorful journey, a path that has many phases and that has been marked by both progress and ongoing challenges. In 2016, we had a significant milestone. We signed a peace agreement between our government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, a guerrilla group known as FARC, Revolutionary Armed Forces. And this agreement aimed to put an end to decades of conflict, 5 decades by that point of an internal conflict here. It led to the demobilization of guerrilla fighters, and it also led to the establishment of some peace strategies and mechanisms, such as the Truth Commission, or such as the Unit for the Search of Disappeared Persons as well. These two initiatives, the Truth Commission and this Unit for the Search of Disappeared Persons, as an attempt to heal the very deep wounds that we have as a country. However, not all the armed actors participated from this agreement. There is another guerrilla group, the ELN, is called the National Liberation Army, that continue their activities, such as armed strikes. And these activities lead to conflict, they disrupt social life, they finish with the tranquility of populations and rural populations, and they bring back very high levels of violence and assassinations in some distant regions like Chocó, or like the countries in the south, like the departments, in the south as well. What we have now are what have been clearly defined as power vacuums there where the demobilization of certain groups has taken place. And sadly, these vacuums are being filled by new actors, by new armed gangs, some of them linked directly to the cocaine trade, much more difficult to identify and much more difficult to get to negotiate anything with them. The current government, our current president, Gustavo Petro, has insisted on developing a total peace policy. But this is much easier to say than to implement. The total peace that this president promised while he was campaigning, we haven't been able to see it, we haven't been able to experience it. The current president has also started a negotiation with other actors, but these negotiations have been used as opportunities by these armed gangs to strengthen their commercial activity, their economy as well. And the situation is far from resolved. It remains dynamic for Colombians and right now quite critical for the government. The current government is in the middle of its worst crisis. At least half of their ministers have resigned in the last 2 weeks due to other sorts of complications. But this dream that many of us had of a country in peace, of a reconciliated country, of a country that learns how to forgive and how to reinvent itself, is becoming very, very blurry. I myself came back to this country 10 years ago in 2014 because I believed in this dream of contributing to lasting peace processes through my expertise, through social enterprises and through social businesses. But it's becoming more and more blurry. Okay, in this very blurry context, I want to highlight the experience of 3 social businesses. And as I said, a social business is a structure around a social objective, has to be financially sustainable and doesn't distribute dividends. It reinvests it all in the social objective. Case number 1, Educambio is the name, something like educational change, something like that. Please visit their website when you have time. Educambio was set up 8 years ago by a 22 years old, a guy from this city, from Cali. What was the prompt to set up an enterprise? He saw a kid writing on the border of a newspaper. He said, why are you writing there in the very corner of a newspaper? And this kid said, because my mom cannot buy me a notebook. She said, I cannot waste my notebook. So this guy decided to create a program where he will ask children in schools, in good schools, in rich schools, to collect and to recycle the pages in their notebooks. When we finish the year, we always have pages here that we haven't used. So he started asking, he created a competition in different schools. Who can recycle more pages in this year, academic year, at the end of the academic year? And he started producing very low cost notebooks that he will finance with money from his pocket. People started giving him not just free pages of notebooks, but also books. They started donating books. And at a certain point, he realized he had so many books that he could build a community library. So he went and built one community library. And then he went and built another one and another one. And by now, Educambio has set up 70 community libraries around this country, some of them in the most remote and conflictive areas of our country. And he decided, I want to continue doing this. I want to continue taking educational opportunities through a notebook, through a library, through a book, to remote parts of Colombia. How can I pay for this? And that's when the idea of creating a social business came handy. He created a store. Educambio is a shop as well, selling what? Corporate stationery, corporate souvenirs, notebooks, folders, agendas, whatever companies are all the time commissioning. Can you please give me a new agenda for 2025? Can you please print this book for our anniversary? Can you give me this goodie bag for this special conference that we have? This is exactly what these guys sell. And they do that in order to continue giving and creating educational opportunities to very underprivileged kids all around the country. Educambio also created a scholarship program with another example that I'm going to develop following this one, with a school called Colegio La Fontaine, and they have now benefited 549 children, poor children from a very poor neighborhood, that have been supported during a whole year of their academic studies, so they can study, so they can eat properly, so they can have their uniforms. And the Educambio team, they have now hired 20 people, all of them under 30. Lucas, the founder, has just become 30 years old. Educambio won't stop. As good social entrepreneurs, they are always looking for more opportunities and how to increase their impact and how to reach even further. My first example, a very successful company. Last year, they registered their highest sales in their history, and everybody is now preferring Educambio notebooks and to order whatever they need as corporate stationery to Educambio. My second case, a school set up as a social business. It's called School La Fontaine. Beautiful name, French inspired, La Fontaine, but in the poorest neighborhood of my city, Cali. Two siblings, out of a family that had 6 children. They were 6, but the last 2 managed to go to university. First, the brother, he went to the army, to the National Army. He paid military service. And he had a dictionary in English, a small dictionary in English. And he learned 5 words every single day that he stayed at the army. When he came out, he knew the whole dictionary. And he decided to go to university to study languages. His sister, she didn't know any other referent. She didn't have any other idea of what to do in a university. So she also decided, because her brother was studying languages at university, she also studied languages. She didn't know any better than that. She then went to Canada, worked as a teacher. She was offered a job teaching English and Spanish in Canada, and she decided to come back to her very poor neighborhood where she had grown up. It's called Siloé neighborhood. You can imagine a Brazilian favela to imagine this neighborhood. Is in the mountain hill, is in the hillside. It is quite complicated getting there. And she set up a bilingual school in one of the poorest neighborhoods of our city. Bilingualism is not for poor people. I learned through this person, Lily Beatty is her name. I learned through Lily that only 4% of the Colombian population speaks English. This is not Germany, this is not Denmark, this is not Japan. Only 4% of the population speak English. And whoever speaks English here, the world is their oyster, because they will have access to opportunities. We have now international companies coming and establishing themselves here. And they don't have enough talent to operate their companies or their call centers because not enough people speak English here in this country. At certain point, Lily heard that there was a guy with a company called Educambio setting up libraries in complicated contexts. And she called him and she said, hey, can you help me set up a library here in my school? All the children that go to this school are the sons and the daughters of cleaners, bus drivers. Some of them, their parents are in jail. Some of them do not have mother and father, but they live with their aunt or with their uncle or with their grandmother. I'm so sorry. There was a huge thunderstorm right now here. I cannot believe that I still have energy.
Maria, also as a reminder that we are nearing the end of the speaker time. So if you could wrap up in like 3 or 4 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Great. The last case study that I wanted to show to you is a company that was set up to sell salad leaves. It's called Pomario. 4 siblings set up this company. They had a huge farm. They do not come from a poor neighborhood. They had a very huge farm in Antioquia, a department here. And they set up a company to sell more lettuce, to sell more of these organic vegetables, with 2 social objectives. 1, dignifying the employment conditions of workers in the rural areas. And secondly, to help Colombia eat well. 88% of rural workers here in Colombia are working in informality. So they started selling edible flowers for fancy restaurants, and during the pandemic, they experienced an exponential growth. Now they sell in restaurants in different cities, in supermarkets, in different organic stores, and they are also trading their fantastic food all over the country through the internet. So to sum up, 3 different examples of social businesses that are helping us to build peace in a country where we cannot seem to be serious about building a peace process. To two of them through educational activities, one of them through selling salad leaves, and the three of them demonstrating that businesses can be used as a force for social transformation and for instigating and for solidifying peace processes. Thank you very much. To finish, this is me making a dream come true 2 years ago, hugging Professor Yunus in Bogota. And this is a very nice package, like a goodie bag, that Educambio made for us to go and train young people in this concept of social business and teaching people that you can also be change makers. Thank you very much for your attention, for your time. I am open for discussions. And as I said before, we can continue this dialogue. Send me an email and we'll all be very happy getting to work together and getting our forces together. Thank you very much. Now I'm open here for questions or however you want to take.
Thanks a lot, Maria. That was a really insightful talk, and I especially appreciated that you connected this rather big theory and idea to very concrete examples and how it plays out on the ground. If you want to ask Maria any questions, you have two ways to do so. You can either raise your hand. Can I? So you cannot raise your hand. I just learned, but what you can do is you can put your question in the Q&A or in the chat, and then I'm very happy to read the question for everyone, and I'm sure Maria is happy to answer them. And as we are waiting for questions to come in, I exploit my role as the moderator to ask Maria the first question. And I was especially, let's say, what resonated with me was when you told us that Colombia is still a colorful country, and despite the 2016 peace agreement, it's far from peaceful everywhere in the country. Especially with in recent weeks, we see more fighting going on. I think it was the heaviest fighting since quite a few years. So I was wondering, how do you establish the social businesses in a context where there is high levels of insecurity, prevalence of criminal gangs, always the risk that armed forces attack or destroy whatever progress is made? So how do these social businesses deal with the challenges of operating in a very insecure and quickly changing environment?
Very good question, Tobias. And Colombia is a very particular case, because despite the fact that we have been submerged, embedded completely for 5 decades, almost 6 now, in a conflict, we are not an economically unstable country. People keep creating businesses. People keep creating very wonderful and winning business models. So just in the same way that people keep setting up enterprises, we are inviting people to think about how your enterprise can be a force for social transformation. Colombia hasn't been as unstable as other countries such as Venezuela or Argentina. This year, for example, the inflation didn't grow as much as it was expected that it was going to grow. So yeah, conditions are not ideal, but people keep setting up very successful enterprises. People keep investing in new ideas, in new business models. And the invitation now is especially for the newer generations. People are demanding as well more from their businesses. my daughter, I have a 21-year-old daughter that doesn't eat meat, doesn't buy fast fashion, and that always is questioning herself, who made this? In which conditions was this produced? So I think not just people are experiencing and exploring with new lifestyles. Not everybody wants now to go and find a job, but many people want to start their own initiative. But also we are demanding more from our businesses, and economic activity continues whether in the middle of conflict or not. It's very well known that there's a lot of people that benefit from that conflict. And my invitation is, just in the same way that we continue to teach how to create enterprises, let's start teaching how to create committed enterprises and committed to elevate levels of well-being, because only then we can talk about creating lasting peace processes.
Thanks a lot. That's a very comprehensive answer. And actually, we just have our very first question. So I'm happy to read that one. So Dalia Simangan, who is a colleague of us here at NERPS and Hiroshima University and does amazing work on sustainable peace. And she writes, "Thank you very much, Dr. Irurita, for the inspiring and informative presentation. I'm sorry I have missed this in the presentation, but I would like to know more about partnerships with large businesses like multinational companies in peace-promoting enterprises."
Thank you very much for that question. No, you didn't miss that. I didn't speak that much about it. But this concept of social business was born, it grew in the context of capitalism. So pretty much that's what Professor Yunus has been doing, talking to big companies, talking to traditional companies, talking to big economic groups, so they can also look inside, so they can scrutinize their own potential, and so they can decide to invest in a new way of solving problems in social businesses. Most of the time, when we talk about this famous CSR, corporate social responsibility, or whatever name we use for it nowadays, we talk about share value or sustainability strategies for traditional companies. However you want to call it, we are talking about the impact of traditional businesses in society. Most of the times, these CSR programs are not linked to the core activities of a business. When the executive committee of one of these companies gets together once a month, they do not talk about what has happened to our social responsibility program. No, they talk about profit. That's in the heart of every business that we know around the world. So with the idea of social business, what it gives us is an opportunity to innovate precisely in this corporate social responsibility practice. Instead of sponsoring this project for pets or this trip to collect rubbish near the river, instead of sponsoring very different practices, none of them linked to the core of your business, why don't you create a social business completely linked to what you know how to do best, to your expertise, based on your know-how, and in the same way that a business can create richness, social business can come and create impact. So it becomes particularly handy to approach traditional companies. Even the bigger corporations now have set up social businesses. Unilever, huge company around the world, has a social business. Ice cream Ben & Jerry is the social business of Unilever. Starbucks has created a social business as well. We have many big companies getting to flirt with this idea of social business, because precisely it helps them transform from within. So that is the idea, to try and change capitalism from within.
Thanks a lot. I think that was a quite comprehensive answer. We have another question by Vrajesh Raval, and he writes, Dr. Irurita, thank you for your very insightful presentation. My question is, how can social enterprises contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly in the context of peace, especially through corporate social responsibility? So there's a good connection to your previous answer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm connected with my previous question, but the good thing about these social enterprises is that they never have a CSR department because they are social responsibility. So what we have seen, this is the experience, for example, of the B Corporation movement here in Latin America. There is also this figure that I invite you all to explore of benefit corporations. B movement is called, or the benefit corporations movement around the world, where to be certified as a benefit corporation, you have to take a test, a very difficult to pass test, a very rigorous test. And the mechanism that is used to certify whether a company can be a benefit corporation or not is called the B Impact Assessment. And this B Impact Assessment is so good and so rigorous that it already contains indicators that relate to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The B Impact Assessment tool was created in 2006. The agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals comes from 2015. And that tool is so powerful, the B Impact Assessment, that it already contains within its questions indicators about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So when we talk about social enterprises, when we talk about people that have used a business model as an excuse to focus, to address one particular problem, we tend to be talking about companies that create triple value, share value in every single point of their production chain. It's very difficult to identify where is the social responsibility of Educambio, where is the social responsibility of this school, La Fontaine, what is the corporate social responsibility strategy of Pomario. They are social responsibility, and they tend to be addressing Sustainable Development Goals, sometimes without even knowing it, sometimes without being conscious about it. Because when you walk into a social enterprise, you realize immediately, here things work differently. When you buy a product from a social enterprise, you are also affecting a situation with your purchase decision. And the reason why the younger generations are deciding and opting more and more for this kind of committed enterprises is because they are educated into the Sustainable Development Goals. They know about the urgency that we have to make drastic changes. One of the main problems that we have with climate change and with the Sustainable Development Goals is that we tend to be happy with simple solutions, with simplistic solutions, and we tend to think that with the small actions we can change something. And no, we need to accelerate the rhythm at which we are coming up with solutions, and we need to accelerate the rhythm at which we are trying to pursue the Sustainable Development Goals, because if we continue at this rhythm, we won't make it. We probably won't even have an Earth to try and look after by 2030, our deadline. 5 years around the corner.
Maria, if I may follow up on that, it seems like you have a big trust in these young people that found the social enterprises, work in the social enterprises, buy products from the social enterprises. And I really appreciate the optimism and the path forward that you outlined there. But for someone who's like me, who's perhaps not as much as an optimist as you are, I also see young people on the street who think that what Elon Musk is doing in terms of, extracting more from the earth, going for more profit is fantastic. And they want to work for these kind of companies. And I think, for instance, in some of the elections we've seen in Europe in the recent months, and actually in Germany, my home country, this week, we will see a significant share of young people supporting parties that reject climate change, that reject social equality. So the question is, within this polarization and with some educated youth going into that direction you're outlining and others rejecting it even more, how do we go forward? How do we create change in a world that is so divided and where not everyone is supporting this idea of social enterprises?
Thank you very much. Very good question, Tobias. I tend to be a very optimistic person. I tend to teach optimism. And I would love to say the history of the world is an unequivocal path in which every day we care more and more and more, and we have more empathy, and we have higher levels of commitment by civil society, for example. We are living in a very different world that our parents live. Today, in 2025, you can go and prepare yourself to be a change agent. You can go and learn about social business within a university. And that wasn't an option for our parents. So yeah, I could just sit from my optimistic lens and say, our history is improving and improving, and the whole world is becoming more conscious and more committed. But it's not true. Our history as humanity is of ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And if the first decade of this century gave us a little bit of hope in different ways for different reasons, what we are probably, the way we are probably heading now is like this, to a new low, maybe to an all-time low. I cannot believe young people electing these kind of parties in countries like Germany. I cannot believe a whole country re-electing a president that proclaimed 2 days ago that he's a king. It's very, very difficult to believe. All the lightness and the stupidity that is going around and the selfishness that is going around. But it has always been like that. We have always had humanity divided into a half of it completely capable of ignoring the suffering of others, and another half that decides to take charge and decides to do something. So I trust in that other half. I trust in the 17 people that we had earlier on that are here trying to learn about peace and sustainability, that are trying to learn from a South American experience. I am from Cali, and in Cali we say, today is Friday, and my body knows it because on Friday we go dancing. So if you have people here connected, and if we have young people registering on these kind of courses, and if we have people from all sorts of backgrounds trying to think, how can I, from what I know and from my context, do something for others, we still have hope. And I am going to use, to finish this answer, Tobias, another of these very beautiful, this is not an analogy, but this is a saying of Professor Yunus. He says, hey, making money gives you happiness. Obviously, who's going to say no? But helping other people gives you extra happiness. So what about if we teach our young people, and not just young people, graduate students as well, and MBA students, and people about to retire as well? Why don't we teach people? Yeah, with the incredible energy and capacity that businesses have to create everything that is good associated with business, why don't we try and create well-being and a shared prosperity for all? We need to move collectively, Tobias, from a transactional, exploitative economic model towards a more relational one, and towards one that is based on reciprocity, on care, on reverence, towards our nature and towards our universe and towards the other one. So I am still optimistic, despite the fact that with this eye, I decide to ignore the other half of the population that are crazy.
Thanks a lot, Maria. That was a very inspiring answer, and I very much appreciate the optimism you're providing us. So I would say so late on a Friday night, but I think it's still Friday morning at your place. And I think it's actually the final answer to wrap up the webinar. We have 1 minute left, which I would like to use to thank you again, Maria, for your excellent presentation and all the inspiring answers. To encourage everyone who visited the webinar and wanted to know more, wanted to further disengage, I really appreciate Maria being available, sharing your email address. So you have the expert here, you have the optimistic expert here. So please feel free to reach out. And also, please check the NERP's homepage or social media presence for upcoming webinars, which I'm confident will be just as interesting as the one we had today. With that, I wish you all a good rest of the day, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night, and hopefully also a good weekend that is about to start. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you all, Tobias. Thank you all, NERPs.